All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're diving deep into EASA Airworthiness Directive 2021-0281 Revision 3. This is a really critical update for anyone operating the Airbus A330 fleet, specifically concerning the engine bleed system. We're going to break down what this means for you, your maintenance teams, and for overall flight safety. So, right off the bat, here's the big question for every single A330 operator: is your fleet fully compliant? And let's be clear, we're not just talking about checking a box for the regulators. This directive tackles a very specific and potentially very serious safety risk. It's all about getting ahead of a problem before it happens. Okay, to really get a handle on what's required today, it really helps to look at how we got here. This directive didn't just appear out of thin air. It's actually evolved quite a bit over time, getting refined as more data came in from the fleet. What I love about this timeline is that it really shows you the safety process in action. You see the original AD drop in late 2021. Then a couple of revisions come out to sharpen the requirements, and here's a key move. Revision 2 actually streamlined things by shifting some actions into the airworthiness limitations section, the ALS, where all the mandatory, life-limited tasks live. The latest one, R3, just cleans things up even more, getting rid of requirements that are basically done fleet-wide. It's a living document, really, adapting as the fleet itself changes.
So what is the actual risk we're trying to prevent here? Well, it all comes down to a single critical component, the engine bleed valve. This little part has a huge job, managing the incredibly hot air that's bled off the engines.
The core of the issue is what's called an engine bleed system over temperature. Basically what that means is the system loses control of that superheated air. And if that hot air isn't contained where it's supposed to be, it can cause some really serious heat damage to the nearby aircraft structure.
And this slide is a perfect breakdown of the chain of events. It all starts with that ECAM caution. Now, the system is designed so that the bleed valve slams shut automatically. But what if it doesn't? What if it gets jammed open? Then the crew follows the procedure, but it doesn't work. And the result is a continuous blast of hot air hitting structures that were never meant to take that kind of heat. And that, right there, is the unsafe condition this AD is designed to stop in its tracks.
Okay, so we know the why. Now for the who. Which specific aircraft are we actually talking about here? The directive is very, very clear on this. As you can see, this applies to a huge chunk of the A330 family. We're talking the -200 series, including the freighters, the whole -300 series, and even the Beluga XL. The bottom line here is simple. If you operate any of these models, this AD is for you. It affects every single manufacturer's serial number. Now, to figure out exactly what action you need to take, the directive splits the fleet into two groups, and the only thing that separates them is the software standard running on the flight warning computer, the FWC. Group 1 has the older software, Group 2 has the newer stuff. Pinpointing which group your aircraft falls into is the absolute first, most crucial step.
All right, this brings us to the real meat and potatoes of this whole thing: the mandatory actions and the deadlines to get them done. If you're on a camo, planning, or maintenance team, this is where you really want to pay close attention.
Okay, let's unpack this. First up, the AFM change. This was an early requirement for any plane that didn't have the new FWC software yet, giving the flight crew temporary procedures. Now here's the big one, the modification. This was the main terminating action for all those Group 1 aircraft. They had to get the FWC software upgraded to standard T93. That's a serious maintenance task that requires planning and downtime. And finally, this one's a forever rule. You are prohibited from installing any of the old pre-T93 software. That's a permanent ban.
Now here's a really key piece of information for all you planners out there. EASA has given an alternative path to compliance. If you're already looking at a bigger avionics upgrade, installing FWSC software T10 or anything later also closes out the AD requirement. That's fantastic for long-term fleet management, letting you align safety mandates with other upgrade cycles.
So let's pull all of this together. What are the big takeaways and what are the clear next steps for your operation?
So, to wrap it all up, what's the story here? At the end of the day, this is all about preventing critical structural damage. The action you need to take comes down to one thing: which FWC software version is on your aircraft. For the older Group 1 planes, that software modification is the main event. The AFM change was just a stopgap, and that ban on installing the old software, well, that's permanent.
And look, if there was any doubt about how seriously we need to take this quote from the EASA regulation says it all. Complying with an airworthiness directive isn't optional. It's not a suggestion. It is a fundamental, legally binding requirement to keep an aircraft airworthy.
So, the bottom line is this. Ensuring your fleet is 100% compliant with this AD is absolutely essential. This is a team effort. Make sure your camo, planning, and maintenance folks are all on the same page. And of course, for the final, definitive instructions, your go-to sources are always the official EASA AD document and the related Airbus Service Bulletin. Thanks for joining me for this breakdown.